Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I am Ryan Patterson with the Maryland State Arts Council. I'm hosting today our first session of Capital Project Strategies for the Arts. We're so excited to be able to do this and have all of you here. I will keep letting people in as we enter the room, but just noting that today's meeting is recorded. Again, this is our first of 4 sessions for Capital Project Strategies for the Arts. And I am so excited to have Ann Powell here as our presenter today. Ann will introduce herself in a few minutes after we do our intro slides. Yeah, we're just thrilled to do this. And thanks for all of the interest and everybody tuning in today. And that might be watching the recording later. I want to just start out by saying that this is tied to Maryland State Arts Council's new Arts Capital grant program, but we are not going to go into deep technical detail about that grant today. These are just kind of general strategies to help anybody taking on capital projects in your work. Just going to start with our introductory slides. So we're joining you all today via Google Meet. Here's a little overview of the instructions. You are welcome to keep your camera on or off, but please keep yourself muted while Ann's presenting today, and then we will have a great time for question and answer that you can chime in. You can also use the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat throughout the presentation. And that red hang up button, be wary that you don't hit that. That will exit the meeting, but you are able to log back in at any time if that happens. Again, there's a little word bubble icon you can use to access the chat, or the people icon will let you see the other participants. I'm going to start with Maryland State Arts Council's land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge the lands and waters now known as Maryland are the home of its first peoples, the Accohonic Indian tribe, the Assateague Peoples tribe, the Cedarville Band of Piscataway Indians, the Choptico Band of Indians, the Lenape tribe, the Nanticoke tribe, the Nassewawash Band of Indians, the Piscataway Conoy tribe, Piscataway Indian Nation, Pocomoke Indian Nation, Susquehannock Indians, Youghiogheny Band, River Band of Shawnee, and tribes in the Chesapeake watershed who have seemingly vanished since the coming of colonialism. We acknowledge that this land is now home to other tribal peoples living here in diaspora, and we acknowledge the forced removal of many from the lands and waterways that nurtured them as kin. We acknowledge the degradation that continues to be wrought on the land and waters in pursuit of resources. We acknowledge the right of the land and waters to heal so that they can continue to provide food and medicine for all. We acknowledge that it is our collective obligation to pursue policies and practices that respect the land and waters so that a reciprocal relationship with them can be fully restored. You can find out more about Maryland State Arts Council's ongoing land acknowledgement work on msac.org. Our equity and justice statement is that the arts celebrate our state's diversity, connect our shared humanity, and transform individuals and communities. The Maryland State Arts Council and its supporting collaborators are committed to advancing and modeling equity, diversity, accessibility, and inclusion in all aspects of our organization and across the communities of our state. MSAC and its grantees are committed to embracing equity and non-discrimination regardless of race, religious creed, color, age, gender expression, sexual orientation, class, language, and/or ability. And our vision is that the Maryland State Arts Council plays an essential role ensuring that each person has access to the transformative power of the arts. And our mission is that the Maryland State Arts Council advances the arts in our state by providing leadership that champions creative expression, diverse programming, equitable access, lifelong learning, and the arts as a celebrated contributor to the quality of life for all the people of Maryland. Our goals set through our last strategic planning process are to increase participation, provide intentional support, build capacity, leverage connections, and bolster the arts in Maryland. And we begin every meeting with these creative meeting actions to celebrate being in the space with other creative people, engage with everyone's presence as a gift, acknowledge that together we know a lot, enter the conversation with curiosity and inquiry, share your ideas, trust that others will be heard, use I statements, focus our language at the task at hand, hold one another accountable with care, and apply yes and I hear your idea, I'm going to add to it, and generally to balance speaking and listening. though I'm doing a lot of speaking, I just have a couple more slides to get through. We hold professional development throughout the year. And again, for those who have just tuned in, this is the first of 4 series of capital project related professional development. These different professional developments range in our content and the level of participation, but we always welcome you to join and also propose your own ideas for professional development by emailing us at msac.commerce@maryland.gov or signing up on our mailing list. Our next in this series will be offered on April 3rd, and you can sign up for that on our Eventbrite. There are other ways to get involved throughout the year, including working as an editor for program policy, serving as a panelist to review and score grant applications. You apply for this opportunity through Smart Simple. It is paid. We provide orientation training, implicit bias training, and compensate you for your time serving as a panelist. We welcome that. And with that all out of the way, I'm happy to welcome our presenter today, Anne. Please take it away, Anne.
Great, thank you. So I think the way this is structured is I have somewhere around 30 minutes to talk. I don't plan on talking that long, and then we can have discussions because this is really about helping you guys have tools to plan and manage your capital projects. So I'm Anne Powell. I have been an architect for 25 years, and I've worked on great big projects up to $100 million down to real small projects in my neighborhood. I've worked for clients as large as the Smithsonian, and I've worked with a lot of regional or local nonprofits and community, like small businesses. And I've worked in my community and as far away as Iowa. And so in that kind of journey of 25 years, what I found most meaningful was doing the work within my community. And I also found that I was very good at project management and helping the clients stay focused on their goals and getting through all the hurdles in a project and kind of bringing it all together and getting it done. So in May last year, I opened my own business, which is called Plan B. It's my plan B, what I'll do for the second half of my career. And I am now what's called an owner's rep. And so I work directly with developers and institutions and nonprofits to help them plan and execute their capital projects. So, you know, a nonprofit knows how to create programming and run their agency, and they also probably maybe have the good fortune of knowing how to raise capital money, but, you know, knowing how to plan and how to plan a capital project and maintain their facility might not be in their wheelhouse. So that's where a consultant like me comes in. And our goal here is to always advocate for our clients. So we help hire and manage the architect and the construction manager. We can start early in design or join as late as construction, just whatever is needed to kind of complement the suite of services that any of our clients have. So that's what I do as an owner's rep. So today, I'm going to talk about a tool that I first kind of started using as an architect on a really big project at the Smithsonian that had its origins there. But what I really liked about it is it helped develop a way to prioritize projects that was a little bit more systematic. So we're going to call this the Facilities Projects Plan. It's really a spreadsheet, which, like any project manager, I like a good spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet does a few things for us. It collects all the data in one place. We'll have now a place where we can have a database for what projects cost in the past and who did that work. And most importantly, it's going to give us a tool to evaluate what projects need to be done analytically. So why would we need this tool? Well, my favorite one is to avoid prioritizing pet projects. You know, it gives us an approach to systematically look at capital expenditures. So, we need to kind of take a big step back and look at where the need is and how to kind of focus on that need as opposed to strategically, as opposed to saying, let's do this project because somebody really cares about the break room. Let's upgrade the lighting over here, but oh my gosh, the rest of the AV in the room is wrong. It helps us kind of develop a different way to look at the forest and the trees. That's what I see as this is a tool that we're going to develop at the granular level, down at the tree level, and use it in that way, but also kind of give us a tool to step back a couple of different tiers to use this information and develop plans. It's going to give us an easy way to see that, oh man, we have an electrician coming tomorrow, and there are 5 other things that we forgot that he needed to do. Now we have a tool that I'll show you how we can use it. So when you have a trade mobilized, you can add a few more things in and get better value for any given project, can get things kind of concentrated and more efficient. And it really does help with tracking what was done, by whom, and for how much. Because how many times does that get lost? You pay the bill and you never remember who did it or how much. The case that I'm using today is an apartment building, and there are there's a drawer full of receipts. There's no digital drive that has all this information on it. And nobody knows anything about when anything was done or how much it cost. So we're unwinding some of that. So to do this, we're going to create this spreadsheet, and it's going to have three worksheets in it. Routine maintenance, completed projects, and then this work list. The first 2 are super easy. They're just kind of freebies, I think, so we're going to hit those real quickly because I think they're very straightforward. And then we'll spend a little bit more time on this work list piece. So routine maintenance, that gives us a very simple tab to track items that need to be done on a routine basis. Maybe that's an annual deep clean. And now we know how much it costs. So you could put that into your operating budget. And you could remember that it was done last December and it's needed to be done next December. But by looking at those 2 things, we're always kind of tracking, was it done and when does it need to be done again, and balancing those 2. Maybe it's an elevator inspection, just anything that you're doing on a routine basis in your facility. Might not be a very long list, but again, it's just a place to start tracking that. And remember who does this work. So it helps with scheduling, tracking the costs for your budgets, and remembering who does the work. Because we aren't all going to stay in the same place in the same time or have the same brain power that we did when we were young. Okay, so the next one is a completed projects list. And that gives us a place to kind of remind, in this case, we can remind the shareholders in the building, these are the 5 things that we did this year, and be completely transparent about what they cost. We're also, for our own benefit, remembering how much it cost us to accomplish this scope of work last time and who did that work. So again, not rocket science, but it is helpful to keep it in track of it. So let's talk about the work list. That's the big item. I know you can't read any of that, but this is the kind of spreadsheet that we're going to build. And this is built by a simple table. So we just take those column headings and turn it into a table. So we can sort by any one of these things. That's what you need to know. So what we're really going to do here is develop a list of everything that needs to get done in your facility. So let's take a little bit deeper dive. The first thing that we're going to do is think about what those columns want to be. What is the information that you need? So in this case, it was, where does this thing happen? What needs to, so is it in the staircase? Is it paint? Changing the carpet. Who does that work? If you happen to know how much it costs, you could throw that in there. I think this column is not necessary, and it, may not ever get populated, but it's just a place to park that. And then the analytical piece comes in, those five, in this case, those 5 categories in the red box. This is the scoring categories. We're going to get into that a little bit more, and they add up to create a composite score for each project. And that way, that's where we start to get that more analytical piece, how to apply this. You can have a comments column. Sometimes that helps provide a little clarity around what you're talking about. I also might link photos in. Sometimes that's helpful to remember what it is that you're talking about. But anyway, develop those columns and do that intentionally, because you're going to kind of be committed to those. And then what you want to do is go do a walkthrough. And that can be with, I always encourage a walkthrough of a facility to be with multiple people, so it doesn't become, you benefit from multiple eyes and perspectives on what's going on, particularly if you have different kinds of needs, like maybe more technical requirements. If you had a theater space, maybe the person that ran the AV equipment knows more about that, so than the executive director, so maybe that would be a good person to add. You just want a good representation of team players on this. And you walk through and you just fill out as many columns as you want to, as you can, again, based on how you want to do that. So that's pretty straightforward, right? It's not rocket science, but it already starts to provide value that way. In this example, right after this work list of 200 items was generated, we had a painter mobilized to do a big exterior project. And we went and sorted. We haven't done anything. We just sorted by paint and exterior and immediately got 4 or 5 items to add to their scope of work. It was maybe 2 or 3% of the value of the overall contract. Nothing of substance. But it gave us an opportunity to knock out some of those nuisances that were around, the graffiti or the rusting doors, things that weren't in anybody's scope of work. But now we know that we've taken care of all the exterior painting projects on the building. So again, that was just like, it's simple, but it is helpful. Now, where the real complexity is, yes, Candace, do you want to ask a question now? Okay. I don't know. I saw a hand go up. Okay. I think.
Yeah, let's just hold the Q&A for the end, and then we can go back to reference slides.
Agreed. Great. I know it's a lot of.
But if people want to put stuff in the chat, I can reply there. But yeah, we'll hold Q&A at the end. Okay. Sorry to interrupt you, Ann.
No worries. So the assessment piece is a place where we can score the projects, and that helps bring us out of that kind of subjective way of looking at projects, and it gives us a tool to prioritize work. So usually, this group of stakeholders decided to develop 5. Honestly, we kept losing. We couldn't even remember what the 5 columns meant. So it's probably a good idea to, be real deliberate with what you're scoring. But a simple way to think of it is, how much does the project cost? If it's a cheap project, then we'll give it a 5 maybe, because it's easy, it's within our reach to do. And so it's going to help pull up that composite score, because the higher the composite score, the higher it's going to move up on the execution list. Is it a safety concern? That's a big priority for all of us. Impact, like a project, does it have a lot of impact for you? That could be with your mission, Or in this case, it was a project that was by the front door would get a higher score than one that was in the laundry room, right? Because it had more impact for all of us. And then maintenance. So something that's a serious maintenance concern would score higher. So if we have a roof leak, that's going to be a 5 because we know that that trickles down to other spaces and creates other problems. But if it's just something we want to do, like, change the color of the front hall, then that wouldn't be high. So we use those categories and they give us a composite score. And then we can move forward and sort like this. So imagine this is 200 items in this list, and these are the top 10 all coming in over 21 points. Now we kind of know what some of our hot things are. Something that's cheap and easy, we might want to go ahead and knock out, right? So we have that and we look at that immediately. And this was one of the most interesting things that happened. 3 of those top things were cheap. We wanted them done. They had high impact and they were exterior painting scope. And so those 3 things went ahead and moved to that painting scope that we were already executing. That was just an opportunistic way to advance our work. That's looking at kind of like the tree level. And then we come back out to the forest level and we're like, okay, but where can we kind of think about making a capital plan? Nobody wants to sit around and just do a honey-do list every year, right? Like it's not just ticking off all these annoying grievances. You want to kind of think about what's your big project here. So we stood back, kind of squinted at the spreadsheet, and what we see is that there are a high number of projects that are coming in our public space. We have lobby, the vestibule, the lobby. There's a lot of work in that public side of the space that's scoring high. And that's when you step back and you kind of take your blinders off and you say, oh, yeah, it's pretty dumpy. Like, it's pretty dumpy, this public space, and it's incongruent. So let's do something about it. So now we have a capital project. And then that's when you move into I think other people will talk about that in a little bit more depth, but kind of already at the highest level, we can take that idea and say, all right, how can we just start to chip away at this capital project? So for this group, we just started with a quarterly look ahead, kind of knowing that every month there was a board meeting that would require approval of work. And kind of the buy-in of the board. So we just broke that work down into chunks. So the first thing was to figure out define the project in that 4th quarter of the year and develop a schedule that was, this is how we're going to tackle this over the next year. And we present that to the board and get approval. And then we have the next quarter. What do we need to accomplish in the next quarter? Some research. And we need an interior designer because we don't want this work done internally. So we have to hire that person and get them approved by the board. That takes a couple of months at this scale. Like, people can move faster. That's just how fast we're moving in this project. And then the second quarter, we can look ahead and start to talk about how we want to have some choices on the project and then start settling into what this project is going to look like. And then we will have to phase the work over several years just because now that we have a big vision plan, we can only afford to do a certain amount of work over in any given year. But think about it that in the past, without this kind of approach, somebody would have picked a new paint color for the vestibule. That'd get painted. Somebody else would say, well, the lobby's looking dingy. Somebody would be like, we need to patch and touch up the paint on all the stair halls, but you know what? Nobody stops and goes, wow, it is a terrible color, or this carpet's 20 years old. So this way we're going to come up with this big overarching project and then create that forest again, and then trickle it back down into trees and project levels that we can execute. So that is how you take a simple spreadsheet and kind of leverage it to help you move forward with your plan. So remember that what we've done at the end is we have these 3 spreadsheets. The routine maintenance gives us, kind of supports that that annual operations process. We have a completed projects, which helps us remember what we did last year so we can celebrate it with our team. But it also provides that archival information. So next time we go to put an estimate together, we have the benefit of that information. And then that work list, where we develop the work list through a walkthrough, we score everything, and then we start to sort it to use that data to benefit us, and maybe develop a longer range, higher thinking plan that we can develop or implement over several years. Hopefully that wasn't too much too fast.
No, I think that's great. Yeah, I think this is a great time to open it up for any questions from the audience. Go ahead, Candace.
Hi, sorry about that before. It was an accident, but I just want to say, Anne, thank you first of all for making the presentation so digestible. I can't speak for anyone else, but I must say, just in the thought processes of how to most efficiently, take on capital projects at all, sometimes just the overarching thoughts about what it entails, it can be a bit overwhelming. So I am still letting your slides marinate. They were so digestible, and I appreciate you for being thoughtful in presenting the information in a way that was understandable and so very not intimidating. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad, because I sat here and went through it several times, and I'd be like, oh wait, I'm missing a step. I was editing slides this morning even. And so that was the goal. And I'm so glad that you found it digestible without being too dumbed down, but I'm glad that worked for you. Thank you, Candace.
And I have a question. Is there any kind of lessons about scaling this up? If you're working on this is I don't know. I mean, I guess an apartment building's a pretty big scale, but does
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, this is basically the same tool that we used. So the Smithsonian, I don't know if you guys remember, during Snowmageddon, they had roofs collapse at a place where they were storing things for air and space. And then in the earthquake that we had, they had plumbing break and damage collections. So what they knew is that they had a big problem, a couple million square feet of problem, and they had no idea how to tackle it. And so they developed a very deep database. Nobody needs to do this, but they went room by room everywhere that collections were stored across 31 collecting units around the world. They have stuff outside of the country, and they scored it, and they developed a very stringent criteria. So, life safety would be one, security would be one, and they had all their disciplines get scored. So it was much more in depth, but again, what that did was it started to pull up data. So we sorted the data in a way that we could say, here are the facilities that have the highest need. Here is and how do you start to break it down, and how much. So anyway, it was a big effort, but I think it's a very scalable tool. It is, you just kind of have to sit down early on and think about what it is that you want to achieve with it. And this was kind of a, if you were working with a nonprofit, there might be other, instead of trade, it might be a different name to that heading, and it might include like AV,
Right.
equipment, computer equipment, furniture, whatever,
I think what is so valuable here is that you can track your routine maintenance things or smaller to-do lists and your big capital projects and not lose sight of those when you cross one off, I guess.
Yeah.
That's really good. I'm going to go to Glenmount Forest. I'm sure that's Jim, our friend Jim.
It is. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah.
And thank you, Ann, for the presentation and the spreadsheet. It just so happens that my dad was an owner's rep in South Florida back in the day, so I can appreciate everything that you're bringing to the table here. My question is, rather than an existing building that might need capital improvements, if you're working on a new project, how would you modify this process as you're developing an updated POR and moving forward from planning through construction, et cetera? Would there be different kinds of changes? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really geared towards existing space. I think that there are other ways that I approach the planning and execution of a discrete project, which is what you're talking about. So, when I get into, I think when I start to plan a project, I focus initially on creating a master project schedule. So getting the framework set for a project and then drilling in a Microsoft project or something, and then drilling down to all those incremental steps. But I always think it's important to be working across scales. So we're going to have a big idea. We've got 3 years to do this. All right. We know that it's going to take 18 months to build it. Boom. Now we have 18 months to get to the start of construction. How does that look? And then, that is less, that's, I don't know. That's just what I do. It's harder to kind of break that down into a spreadsheet, I guess. Does that answer your question or open up the discussion for you?
It started to, and I appreciate that. Maybe it's better to have that kind of conversation offline, because this is a process in our particular project that is undergoing a design process and construction that we know is going to happen in X amount of time, et cetera. So moving forward on that process is what we're in the thick of. So any insights are always invaluable.
Yeah, I mean, I think there it's always about I find the first place that a project gets undone is by the schedule. And it may just be how my brain is wired, but I have a plan. I think it's important to make a plan and to accept that your plan will never materialize the way that you planned it. That's why you have a plan B and a plan C. But I think it's important to get some metrics against which you're measuring your progress. That's the most critical thing. But I'm happy to talk with you offline and explore that,
Thanks so much. Let's go to Patricia. Is your hand up?
Okay, I think you somewhat answered this in the last question. My question has to do with sequencing a project, and I'm assuming you use another tool for that, like sequencing the trades, and on all the steps to get everything in the right order. Is that right? I mean, do you have another tool for that?
Yeah. I've been an architect for 25 years, so that is in my DNA. It's also like how I think. So I don't have a real discrete tool for that. I think that's something that just comes with experience. I think, Ryan, are there other people that are going to talk more about implementation at that level later
Yeah,
on?
I do think that maybe some of that would be addressed a little more specifically in upcoming sessions. I think specifically one place that may be interesting to give an answer on that is the last session where we're going to have an architect, an engineer, and another kind of master planner around energy talk about they kind of like have an open Q&A. And I wonder, it'd be interesting from their perspective, what time do you call them in, or
I'm thinking,
yeah.
yeah, I'm thinking more along the lines of if you've got several projects going on simultaneously and you want to say bring in a plumber or bring in an electrician or something like that, sequencing them so that the one thing that you mentioned was, having the trades do more than one, like easy add-ons.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think when I think about that, you kind of want to go in, who gets to the job first is demolition, then the larger trades usually that are in the wall. So plumbers go before electricians, typically just because they're bigger. The pipes are bigger than an electrical back box, unless movable. But I think, maybe one way to think about it is from the inside out, and from you want the most destructive things done first, and then kind of an internal, and then keep moving out like that. But there is a rationale to it, and I think that it just kind of depends on the nuance of what work you're having done.
Yeah, I was just thinking of some sort of a tool to keep track of that, so that particularly if you've got more than one thing at a time, you might jump something ahead of something else just because you've got the guy there.
Yeah.
So are there tools for that is the question.
I don't have anything that is transportable like that for that work, unfortunately. Again, it's just a body of knowledge for me, and I don't have a way to really track it.
Well, thank you. I think your spreadsheet that you presented is very good. I think that'd be very, very helpful in itself.
Thank you. Thank you.
Man, I think that also, I just want to chime in there that, Anne, you mentioned as a licensed architect, you did that and learned experience. And, there's reasons that those are licensed professions, right? And you learn that stuff, and you often need to work with a professional. Maybe your architect or your project manager would help sort of with that staging, right? They would bring that up to a project.
Yeah, and that's something that that's part of what I do professionally, right? Is I recently had a project where somebody said, oh, well, we assume that these buildings have to be shored to do the demolition of this. And you're like, well, I don't understand why we wouldn't just, the buildings on either end, we can go ahead and put all the new structure in there, and then they will be able to be independent, and then we can drop the building in the middle. And that way we could save on shoring cost. And then the person said, oh, well, I guess you could do it that way. So it's lots of experience and teamwork really in getting all those projects done.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to Dawn, and I will put, I see somebody asking for your contact information. I will put your website in the chat bar.
Great, thanks.
Go ahead, Dawn.
Thanks, Ryan. And just out of curiosity, in the 5 sections of your work spreadsheet, where you calculate the values, the composite score, are you using formulas to do that? Do you have a key for that? How are you creating that ultimate score?
Yeah, I think this is kind of a arts and science kind of way, right? Like we don't want to think this is too much science, but it's trying to add a little bit of kind of making a systematic thinking. So there isn't, I mean, in this case, like for the Smithsonian, I'm sure that they had pages and pages of descriptions to how a score would be used. For us, it was literally like 1 to 5 felt like a good range. And we sat down as a group. It was a group of the facilities committee sat down and did this together. And people, you know, it's just a general idea of how to get things quantified, I guess. I mean, it was not super scientific. If an organization wants to make it super scientific, they can certainly say, you know, a 5 is this, a 4 is this, a 3 is this, a 2 is that. But we just we skipped it through all that and just set them together.
Thanks.
Thank
Oh,
you. Ann.
Carolyn has her hand up. Go ahead, Carolyn.
She's still muted.
Yeah, I don't hear you yet.
Hold on. We can't hear you.
Sorry.
Hear you.
There we go. I'm Carolyn with Nomu Nomu in Baltimore. And I was just gonna say, my brain doesn't work this way. So I really appreciate like just laying this out. It's like something I think I could follow. Do you have advice on what project management tools? I think you mentioned like Microsoft Project. Do you have others that are particularly well suited for this, or, you know, could any software that is, or, you know?
Well, this tool is all Excel.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, you know, it's like I just have an Excel spreadsheet that has 3 tabs and everything is turned into a table so I can easily sort by any column or apply filters. That sounds like a lot of words. I'm like a heavy user of 1% of any computer program, right?
Okay.
So it sounds like a lot, but I promise I'm no power user.
Okay.
But if somebody sets that up, it's real easy to do. But yeah, I mean, all the special tools I use, I get from Microsoft with my Office subscription, you know.
Okay.
Pretty
That's
straightforward.
helpful.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to back up all the way to the beginning, but we don't have a lot of money, like probably a lot of arts organizations. So we'll have to do, you know, a bunch of this upfront stuff by ourselves, and we'll figure it out. This is really helpful. So.
And I think it's really a meaningful exercise, you know, like I feel like a lot of times there's just no shortcut. You have to do the work, you know, and doing that collective walkthrough with the right stakeholders, we all turn a blind eye to what we don't want to see. And so kind of walking with a group of people, it holds us honest. I mean, it's a little painful when you have the one person that points out every single ding, you know, like, okay, but you know, it is helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just want to follow up on that. I think it would be pretty easy for us to set up we can make a template of this and in Google Sheets or something and share it out to anybody who's signed up today. I'm happy to do that. But yeah, I'm also always curious about what other project management softwares people recommend, but it usually comes as a subscription with wherever your office might pay for it or something.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have always just used the ones that come with Office, and I use spreadsheets for all kinds of things, that are not quantitative. You know, this is really just a data sorting tool with the most basic computation, you know. But you know, I don't have access to a lot of fancy software, nor do I have the interest in learning it.
It's an uphill curve, right? You got to do the work, not just learn.
Yeah.
So. Any other questions? Oh, yep. Chris Barkley says, yeah, we use Smartsheet. Yep, that is certainly a good opportunity to do project management. Yep. There's definitely a lot of more services out there than there used to be. I think lots of different options. Any other questions from the audience? Does anybody want to just share a project you're working on, maybe that you think you could apply this and talk about some of the challenges you've been running into, or positive stuff that's come up? Go ahead, Candace.
Thanks so much. And I apologize. I have my toddler in the back seat. Just really quick. So I am the director of the TWIX program from the Baltimore School for the Arts. I'm an alumni of the program, both TWIX and the Baltimore School for the Arts. And I've also been an early childhood education specialist, working with youth and family engagement for the last 12 years. I am working on finding a brick and mortar, excuse me, for an arts-based space that caters to ECE. And so this conversation and the series that are going to follow is super helpful for me to just, get a little bit more, to just get a little bit more clear on next steps. So thank you.
Yeah, so all 4 of my children did TWIX, and one is an alumni of BSA and one is at BSA right now, and I live half a block from there. So, and I think Ryan, do you have same kind of story?
Yeah, I have an 8th grader in Twigs now. My older son graduated. My younger son just turned in his acceptance paper. So we're going to admit our biases right now for that program.
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah, but I think, I think if you have any questions, Candace, you feel free to reach out to me.
I'm also curious, Candace, you said ECE educator, or maybe could you just break that down? What is that? I'm not familiar with that term.
I'm so sorry. So early childhood education. When I started in ECE, it was actually a mistake, if you will. I was actually just volunteering to support my son and his preschool teachers. And of course, because art is my entire foundation, I kind of just seamlessly, started to integrate practices into the classroom that were very, very impactful and produce some amazing student outcomes. And so, as life takes its course, and I love the whole idea of the plan BCD, because no matter how you, even when we intentionally say, okay, this is going to be the steps of action, life happens, right? And so now finally, I'm in a space in life and my personal career, that just allows me to move forward with actually, again, finding a brick and mortar. I'm so sorry. I think he does this on purpose. But yes, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. It's exciting.
I know we can't mute our children.
Thankfully, we can. We need to hear them sometimes.
Yeah.
Daniel, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dan. I'm the director of Milburn Stone Theater at Cecil College. So we are actually, right before the pandemic, we started the process of getting ready to kick off a capital campaign to replace our seats. The building was built in 1992. Seats were original to the building. So I'm very thankful our patrons have taken very good care of our seats, but they are starting to show their wear and tear. So this has been a project that started, like I said, before COVID. We're starting to kind of ramp it back up. And one of the things throughout this process that what little information we had acquired prior to COVID has drastically changed, especially pricing and seating, and then also the scope of the project. It was originally just going to be the seats. We had some of our soft goods replaced recently, and we decided if we did go in a route of normally in a theater, you try to have your seats match the main curtain. We decided to hold off on replacing the main curtain in case we change the color of the seats. And now our step lighting and stuff is starting to show its wear and tear. So adding in, so while we had a basis for the project, things have been added to it. And that's, we are thankful to be a part of the college in the sense that we have the facilities department. So being able to do a walkthrough with them and identify those, things that, we might not have seen as people running the theater versus facilities knowing like, hey, the wiring that's going to be required to change where the lighting is going to go, whether it's going to stay on the steps or you're going to get posts with lighting in it. we have something very similar to this spreadsheet that is very easy to organize when it comes to when we come into money that can handle maybe some small projects that we thought were going to be part of the capital campaign, but we, got a large donation from a donor or something, and we can just go ahead and get that kind of covered, but also making sure that it's not going to negatively affect a process later down the road.
Yeah, your project is a really perfect example of that, where you have to think at so many layers at the same time. If you're going to change the seats, well, you definitely want to make sure you're putting them down on a floor finish that you're happy about. I swear I did a Eddie's of Roland Park grocery store on Roland Avenue. They just did a major renovation, and my joke is it was all driven because they needed new floor. And you have to take out everything in a grocery store to replace the floor. And by the time you've done that, you're kind of into a whole nother project. But that's exactly right. And another piece that I was thinking about when you were talking about that is like, that's where, on this example that I gave you, it works the same way. Like, you could go ahead and do a design because design is cheap compared to construction. It never feels that way when people are paying for design, but I assure you it's nothing compared to construction. So you can go ahead and do the design for what that space is going to look like. Pick your fabrics, pick your carpet, pick your paint. And then that way you can move things a little bit more independently. Like if you had somebody show up and they wanted to buy that new curtain, you could know that you were working towards this end, this finished palette. But that's kind of being able to create that big plan and implement it in chunks, knowing that you're never undermining the big vision all along.
Yeah, in this whole we've had discussions because we have a balcony overhangs, and our booth where the audio engineer sits for shows is cut off from the main cluster of speakers, so they struggle. So at one point when we were talking about this project, it was like, since we're going to be replacing the seats, do we look at maybe relocating the audio setup somewhere else? So it definitely, being able to keep track of everything makes it much easier when things do pop up. You can kind of see where they fit into the puzzle, or if they even fit into the puzzle at all.
Exactly.
Okay, I think Dan just one more question, Tim, for one more, and then I'm going to wrap up. Patricia, did you have another question?
No,
Or
I
a-
really didn't have a question. You had asked about projects people
Oh,
were
please.
working on.
Sure.
One of the challenges we have a large building that was built 100 years ago, and it was donated to us, partially donated. We've got a ground level that we are turning into a gallery, workshops, artist spaces, hopefully a theater, things like that. Upstairs, we have 8 apartments that when they are all renovated and rented, they will pay for operation of the building. And so one of our challenges is, do we do the apartments first, or do we do the workspace first, the gallery space, the artist space first? And that's been a real challenge. We're privately funded, and so money is very scarce, and that's a challenge. And so I'm thinking that your worksheet might come in handy to help us decide those kinds of things. What comes first?
Absolutely. Then there's also another idea, although I'm not devoted to this, but it basically what you're talking about too is phasing, and your phasing has a capital, you're going to need capital to do both of those things. So, the first thing I'm thinking is, well, if you turn the upstairs into revenue generation, that's going to underwrite the capital that's needed downstairs. That's a possible thing that you think about. And another one is phasing. Is the construction impact. So, maybe you want to start at the top and come down. Maybe there's a logic to that. So you want to start with the apartments and come down to the central space. Or perhaps you don't want tenants living above a construction site. So those are the kinds of questions you have to think about. Yeah.
No, thank you.
That's so great. That is That's a really some good advice. And I am sorry to cut us off, but we are at time, and out of respect for everybody's time, I want to just go to the end and just quickly ask if anybody had any further reflection on today's session. Generally, maybe not a question for Anne, but just like if you want to share anything about appreciation or what you hope to get out of future, we're open to that. I'm also going to put in the chat here a couple of links. So if anybody's thinking about a reflection, you feel free to raise your hand. But just looking ahead, if you have a question for Anne, I put her website in the chat, but you can also email me. I'll pass things along. We have a couple of future sessions coming up. You probably are already found your way to that if you sign up for today. And but the link's there. And then if you want to just get on our mailing list to hear about upcoming grants and other notifications, there's a link for that as well. Jim, go ahead if you had a reflection.
I was just going to ask you to expound upon, I know we've seen the titles, but for the next 3 sessions, what kind of focus you expect them to be? If you could tell us a little bit more about the upcoming rest of the series.
Sure. Next week, we have 2 people from the CapEx advisory group, and they're going to speak a little bit more specifically towards fundraising and fund planning, I think, about how to manage funds over a project. Then we have Andrew Chavez, who's another owner's rep, and he's going to sort of talk about a similar just kind of like process that he's developed in his own work, and he's calling it the triple constraint around quality, time, and budget, I think. And then the last one is ask kind of an open forum, ask a construction expert. And we can't cover every base, but we have 3 interesting people that have been involved in the kind of Maryland, DC border of the Gateway Arts District.
That's great. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Okay, if there's no other thoughts, I think we're going to end for the day. Feel free to send other general notes you'd like to share back to msac.commerce@maryland.gov. And thank you. If you take a photo of this link, it'll get you to our mailing list as well. But I just want to thank one more time. Thank you so much, Anne, for sharing your knowledge and your passion, and as an art parent, an art lover, and a big nonprofit advocate around Maryland. We just appreciate you taking time to be with us.
Thank you so much. It was awesome. Good luck to everyone.
All right. Have a great day, everybody. And the recording.